Hey guys, welcome back to Wentworth Live and welcome to another Wentworth review. Now in this video I am going to be reviewing Wentworth Season 1 Episode 7, Something Dies. Now I can remember when I first saw the title of this episode before the episode had even aired, I was really concerned that someone was about to meet a grisly end. Thankfully though, we had no deaths in this episode, but this episode is flipping amazing. It's the episode where Jax finally gets some sort of comeuppance, but things do get pretty dark in this episode, like next level dark. But before we do get to that, I just wanted to talk about Will Jackson, because this episode is his backstory episode, and Will really goes into a dark bubble of recklessness in this episode. I mean, when the episode begins, Will is on the sofa shagging some random woman, while he's shagging her, he's staring at a photo of his deceased wife, Meg, and Will is looking really angry in this scene. I mean, we do end up learning just how bad Will's drug abuse really is, because there is a scene where Will is still a little bit wired while he's on duty in the prison, and he's a total arsehole to Vera over the whole Adam boyfriend thing. Now Fletcher ends up cornering Will in the gents' toilets and tells him to basically get a grip, and Fletcher can see just by looking at Will's eyes that he is back on the drugs. Later on in the evening, Will buys himself even more drugs and he gets very dangerously high while alone at home. He starts to hallucinate when he sees his dead wife Meg before collapsing on the ground, and he pretty much starts to overdose. Luckily, Fletcher comes to visit Will just in the nick of time, and Will manages to throw up the drugs before he needs medical attention. This is where we learn that Meg had an abortion behind Will's back before she was killed, and this is what has basically set Will off on this path of destruction. Fletcher is looking a little bit concerned himself, because we all know that Fletcher was having an affair with Meg. Now Will is pissed off because he was trying for a baby with Meg, or at least so he thought. So Will decides that he isn't going to do any more crying over Meg Jackson, and by the end of this episode he ends up packing away her belongings into a box. And I tell you what guys, I really don't like it when Will is on these drink and drug benders. He really turns into a nasty, horrible person, and from what we see during the flashback scenes in this episode, I get the impression that Will used to have quite a big drug problem with drugs, because there's actually a moment where Will is snorting some cocaine, I'm gonna guess, and he's offering Meg a line, and Meg is like, oh no, not this early, not first thing in the morning. So my idea of this is that Will was once a party animal in his younger days, and he got himself a little bit of a drug problem, and then I'm guessing that when he did finally become a prison officer, he curbed his addiction. But after Meg's death, this is why he is now back on the drugs and on a really dark path. Thankfully, this does eventually stop as the seasons go on, and Will does become a much stronger, nicer person in time. Jax was getting ready for Frankie's return from the slots. She has something big planned for Frankie, and when Jax tells B that she has a lot of little jobs for everyone to do, B goes to Doreen to find out what the hell is going on. Now Doreen tells B and Liz that it's basically a gang-in, which is rape basically. And Liz tells a story about a prisoner called Sally Lee who was once ganged with a screwdriver, who ended up eventually topping herself not long after. Now Doreen tells Liz that she doesn't want any part of it, but she doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know how to get out of it. There's nobody around to protect her or the rest of them. B ends up going to see Jax and begs her not to go through with this, and I actually really like this scene because something happens. B clearly rattles Jax in this scene. She makes her nervous. Even Jax says that B is brave because nobody else has had the guts to go to her to air their opinions. Now, this does not end well for B, because Jax and her crew, they end up beating the crap out of B, and it's bloody brutal. I did forget to say that this is actually the first episode where we are introduced to Simone Slater, who is someone who basically works for the Holt family on the outside and is quite friendly with Jax. So Simone is basically part of Jack's crew, and she's also one of the people who end up bashing B. Frankie is released from the slot and she sees a very badly injured B in the medical unit. Now, Doreen comes in and Frankie can sense that something is not right with her. Now, don't forget that in the previous episode, Jax has been spreading the word that saying that Frankie was the one who gave Tony the drugs, which of course is not true. Jax thinks that she has Doreen on site, but does she really? Well, when Frankie goes to the gym to work out alone, Jax arrives with some of her crew, and Doreen is also there as well. Now, Doreen ends up closing the door, and just before Jax's crew are about to do something awful with that screwdriver, Boomer and the girls come bursting in, and I was like, yes! I cheered so hard when I first saw this scene. Boomer pretty much throws all of Jax's crew out of the gym, and then Jax is then kicked to the ground, dragged over to some of the weights, some of the gym equipment, where Frankie ends up crushing Jax's hand over and over again. And it was really satisfying to watch. I can remember when I first saw this episode and with my mum, I can remember my mum saying Jax deserved that one. I also love the bit where Frankie says to Jax that this one's for B. Now for me, this just shows just how loyal Frankie can be as long as you don't double cross her. It was about time that Jax finally got some sort of payback because she's been ruling the roost for far too long, and we learned that it was Doreen who actually told Frankie about this upcoming attack, and Frankie ends up telling Doreen that Jax got into her head and she's pretty much got to sort herself out from now on. Erica really annoys me in this episode when Debbie comes to the prison to visit her mum. Now, Erica is questioning B, demanding to know who her attackers were, but B knows better than to lag, and Vera then comes in and says that Debbie is here to visit B, but Erica, being the bitch that she is, she tells B that if she wants to see her daughter, then she needs to reveal her attackers, which is just horrible. It puts B into an impossible situation, and Debbie is then sent away from the prison without any reason, and I hated Erica when she did this to B. She should have just let B see her daughter. End of. A few other things to mention about this episode is Will ends up seeing Braden and Debbie when Will goes to this club to buy some drugs, and he sees them both, eating some pills. Vera and Fletch are so adorable in this episode after their kiss from last week. There's a scene where Fletcher gets blood on his shirt after he takes B to the medical unit, and Vera tells Fletch to use vinegar to help get rid of the stain. Now, as we all know, Vera ends up becoming Vinegar Tits in season 2, but this was a nice little subtle callback to Prisoner Cell Block H. So my favourite moment in this episode is 100% Jax getting some payback in the gym. It's an epic moment. It's a moment that we will all remember forever, and yeah, it's just fabulous. My least favourite moment has to be Will being really horrible to Vera while he was still a little bit pinned on duty. I hate this side to Will, but I'm so glad that we don't get to see this side of him as seasons go on, because if we did, Will would not be one of my favourite characters going forward. I think this might be one of my favourite episodes of season 1. It at least makes my top 3. I honestly had no idea what was going to happen after I first watched this episode, but things are starting to get crazy. Let me know what was your favourite moment in this episode, and let me know if you had any predictions when you were first watching season 1. Let me know if you had any predictions, if you knew what might have happened going forward. Let me know all of your thoughts. Right, okay then guys, well, we have reached the end of today's video, so thank you all for stopping by and taking the time to watch my video. Make sure you've hit that subscribe button for all future updates, and I hope to see you all again very soon. Bye guys.